Will Germany's coalition government survive its re-election? That is the question we're going to be answering in this video today. I want to start out by saying welcome to the channel and that I am an American who is currently an intern in the German Bundestag. The point of this channel will be to cover German politics from an American perspective and for an American or English-speaking audience. So, to get started, I want to take a look today at the polling averages for the political parties in Germany and an overall view of the political situation in the country. For those of you who don't know, Germany's current government consists of three political parties: the Social Democratic Party, seen in red, the Greens, of course in green, and the FDP, seen in yellow. Now, this is referred to colloquially in Germany as the traffic light coalition because the colors of the three parties make up the colors of a traffic light. It is the first government of its kind, on the federal level at least, and it is also the first government in Germany consisting of three parties since the 1950s, which of course creates a lot of problems because you have three different groups that have all made promises to their voters and are going to demand concessions in order to retain the support from the last election. Now, to put it mildly, the situation is not going well for the current government. And I want to take a look at the results of the polls compared to the previous election in 2021. Germany holds its parliamentary elections for its Bundestag every 4 years. The last one being in 2021 means the next one will be in 2025, probably sometime around September. So there's still 2 years until the next election, and keep in mind these are only polls, these are not actual results, so a lot can change, but it's still important to look at these because we can see the overall trend in the country, what's going on, and that will paint us a picture of what might happen in the future. Now we see this chart here. We have two bars for each of the colors, and on the left there is a more darker shaded bar. That is the current polling aggregate. That is what the party is expected to get in the combination of all the polls from the different polling organizations in Germany. The lighter shaded, more faded bar on the right is what those parties got in the previous election in 2021. And as we can see clearly, with also these numbers down here, that the SPD, the Greens, and the FDP, the governing parties, are all losing. And together, it is over a 10-point swing, a 10-point drop in support for the current government from the last election, and that is enough to put them below a majority. So it's easy to say that if there was an election held today in Germany, the current government would be defeated. And we can see most of the support is going to the opposition parties, the AfD, and also the CDU, CSU. Now I want to take a look at the individual results for each of the parties in the polls and go over those and what they really mean. Now the 27% we see for the CDU, this is an okay result, but not necessarily a great result. This is an improvement from the 2021 election, and this is also putting them clearly in the lead. They are by far the largest party in Germany. However, the CDU, along with the SPD, has been able to poll into the 40s, even the high 30s, all the way up until the 2000s, 2010s, and 2013. Then Chancellor Angela Merkel was able to carry the CDU to a 41% victory. And so looking at it from a historical perspective, they're doing better than the last election, but the overall trend is still way down. Now, the 19.2% for the SPD is an absolutely horrendous result. This is worse than what they got in 2021, but this is also underperforming their 2017 result. And that election result was the party's worst performance in an election in modern German history since 1949 in the foundation of the Federal Republic. So this would be, again, their worst result if repeated in an actual election. And not only that, it would put them potentially in third place. They are now tied in the polls second place with the right-wing Alternative for Germany party. The AfD was founded in 2013, and it has become a very controversial party in Germany. It is by far the most right-wing political party on the German political scene of the parties we see here. And them being at 19.2% has definitely been a shock to the German political establishment and the German media. They are freaking out about this because the party is very right-wing, and with Germany's history and everything, it is very taboo, and they hold positions that in other countries might be more digestible to the public. However, in Germany, large sections of the population and the political class isolate the party and view it in a very negative way. So for them to be at 19.2%, potentially beating the party of Germany's chancellor is a huge deal. And nonetheless, even if they don't, 19% would be a near doubling of the result that they got in the last election. So for them, an absolute good result. The 14.6% we see for the Greens is somewhat of a mixed result. Now, the Greens are in the government with the SPD, but they're not losing the same amount of support. The Greens are not taking a large hit from being in the government. They're not taking much of the blame, and that is good for them. However, looking at the overall picture, the Greens have a lot of potential. They have a lot of movement behind them. You have youth, more environmentalist organizations such as Fridays for Future, The Last Generation. You have popular figures like Greta Thunberg, which have all been able to push the Greens, especially amongst the young, to the forefront of the political discussion. Before the 2021 election, they were in the mid-20s in the polls. They got up to, I believe, 26%. But their then chancellor candidate, who is now the foreign minister, Annalena Baerbock, she made a lot of mistakes. She came off as not the most organized and charismatic candidate, and they fell from about 24% in the polls down to 15%. So they're not taking a big hit like the SPD is, which is a good thing. But overall, with the amount of potential they have behind them, they really should be able to capitalize on that more, and they really should be at a higher number, at least from their perspective. And the 6.8% for the FDP, this is an interesting situation. The FDP is the centrist party in a center-left or somewhat left-wing government. So, of course, there's going to be a lot of policies and measures the government is going to take that are not going to be approved by the FDP voters. However, the position of the FDP is that they wanted to be in government. Historically, the FDP had been very involved in German governments, whether it be with the CDU or whether it be with the SPD. And for the past 5-10 years, that had kind of waned. They had not been as involved as they were historically. And the party believed it was in the best interest for them to be in government, to oversee policy and legislature and everything. And as long as they maintain 5%, they will have representation in the German Bundestag. That is what you need. There is a 5% threshold. As long as you're at 5%, you get over 5% of the votes, you're able to win seats. So I think the position of the party is very clear. They want to be in the government, and they know they're going to have to support some unpopular decisions, but they're willing to do that as long as they're still in the government and able to influence policy for their voters, for the people that back them. However, if they do fall below 5% in the polls, I do think that is when the discussion will happen within the party whether or not they should remain or pull out of the government. And if they do pull out of the government, we could see early elections before 2025. But right now, that I don't think is the case. Now, the 4.8% for the left party, Die Linke, is not real. It's kind of a meaningless result. This is, I believe, in the margin of error. In fact, almost the exact 4.9% that they got in the last election. So we can see really one of two things. They could either get 5% and remain in the Bundestag, or they could fall below 5% and lose representation. It's really hard to tell because this 4.8% can really go either way. But I want to take a look overall at the government situation, and we're going to take a look at the approval rating. Now, if we look at the approval rating, for the government, we see a even worse picture. The current approval rating is 20%, which is obviously bad, and this is definitely a drop from where they were when they were elected. And this shows that a large majority, in fact, of the German population is dissatisfied with the government. Now, there are a number of reasons for this. The economic situation in Germany isn't great. There are a lot of problems going back to COVID, going back all the way to the financial crisis, 2008. There's even problems with German reunification, and then that happened in the 90s and in some of the eastern parts of the country. And all of this has been made worse by the current sanctions policy. The current government has had a very aggressive and hostile position towards Russia and imposed many sanctions, which have definitely had an impact on Germany and the German economy as well. Which is, of course, the German economy is very reliant on Russian gas, and Germany has had to cut their energy consumption. Manufacturing has suffered losses, and we see rises in inflation and overall just a lot of issues. There are also other problems. On the cultural level, the Greens are very progressive. Although they don't technically lead the coalition, they hold a lot of power. They control the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Economy, the Ministry of Family Affairs. So they definitely have a lot of influence, and in some cases it appears that they are the main ones pushing the policy rather than the SPD. And they have definitely alienated themselves from some of the more moderate or conservative independent voters who are now backing the CDU and the AFD. But in general, it's more of an anger towards the current economic situation and political direction. And people who might not have even voted in previous elections are now backing the AFD and CDU because those are the strong main opposition parties. Now, what's interesting to note with that is that the CDU and AFD are polling at over 50%, meaning that if there was an election, those two parties would win a majority. And this is the first time that we had an objective right-wing majority in the German parliament. Theoretically, this is of course still polls, since 1957 when the CDU itself won an absolute majority. Now, lastly, I want to talk what I think would be the outcome of this election if this would actually happen. And what I think most likely to happen were to be the Jamaica coalition. This would be switching the SPD with the CDU, and the Greens and the FDP would remain. It would have a somewhat more pro-free market approach on economy. It would be slightly more hostile towards Russia, more pro-American, more Atlanticist, more pro-EU in foreign policy terms, but overall it would be very similar. Now, with this being the case, the FDP and the Greens don't have to worry about losing support as much, because if the current government loses the election, they can still remain. They can still keep positions in the ministries, and the biggest loser will be the SPD. And I think if the SPD loses the next election, it could be the end of them as a people's party, meaning one of the major two parties. We could see trends in demographics continuing to go against them, with the more working class voters going towards the AFD and younger, more progressive voters going towards the Greens. Now, the SPD would still be present on the political scene, but not the major force they were in the past. But like I said, we are a ways away from the election, so I don't want to overanalyze these results too much, but nonetheless, it is a very interesting situation to look at. And that is going to be it for this video. I thank you all for watching, and please like and subscribe and comment down below.